So Hawaii ended, and I was like, okay, well, this is fine because I have extensive credits working for Soul Food. I have one credit for this NBC show, and because Soul Food, we didn't write and shoot on the normal sort of like broadcast schedule.
Yeah.
So the whole concept of like staffing season and getting prepped for meetings and having a pilot ready to go out with, I never experienced any of that in my first few years of my career.
Yeah.
Because I didn't need to.
Yeah.
I went back to Soul Food. I had a expectation that I would go back to Soul Food every single season.
Yeah.
So once I sort of like, when Soul Food was over and Hawaii was over, I was sort of now out in the wilderness of like, oh, I have to like go pound the pavement for another job.
Yeah.
And I figured with my experience that it would be a breeze, and it was anything but a breeze.
Oh.
So I went through a dry spell. And which was fine for the first couple of years because I had amassed enough of a nest egg that I didn't have to worry. But the thing that I learned and the thing that I would impart to writers who are coming up, save your money.
Yeah.
Live below your means. Because what happened was when the NBC show ended, I was so confident that I would get a job on the next staffing season that I didn't alter my lifestyle. I was never really extravagant.
Right.
But, you eat out 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Because you're making that NBC writer money. I was mid-level at the time, which was still pretty good money. You're taking trips. You're going to the movies. You're buying stuff. And it didn't occur to me that maybe I should curb my spending just in case I don't get a job.
Yeah.
And in a couple of years of living like that, I literally watched my savings account dwindle down to almost nothing.
Oh.
Because I went out on meeting after meeting after meeting and just couldn't land that next job.
Yeah.
And ended up having to get a day job for a while.
What'd you do?
I was an admin assistant.
Oh, okay.
Once again, thinking I'll do this for 6 months, and I'll or a year at most. And the next staffing season that comes around, I'll hop on another show. And it was a bit of an extended dry spell.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: even though I was having a career dry spell, I never stopped writing.
That's smart.
If someone were to ask me what day job should they get if they have to, as a writer, I would always suggest, if you can, get yourself a job as an admin assistant.
Why is that?
Because number one, you get to sit at a computer all day.
Yeah.
You're not on your feet making coffee or making sandwiches or whatever. And number two, if you are as crafty as I was, and you work at a job that lets you install software on your office computer, you install Final Draft. and when people think you're actually working, you're writing. You're writing all day long.
That's beautiful.
So I had this job for a few years, and in that time, I became determined to get my writing career back on track.
That's smart.
I was like, I'm going to break back in if it kills me.
Yeah.
It was never real. I never really seriously considered. I mean, when you don't work for a while, after having had some fairly early success, you can't help but wonder, like, is it over?
Yeah.
Like, did I burn out? Like, did I shine brightly and then burn out really fast, and this is it?
Yeah.
But so the thought creeps in.
How do you push it out?
Writing.
Just keep doing what you do.
Yeah.
Stay true.
So I simply made a decision. One day I said to myself, because I had an agent who was sending my stuff out and just couldn't. It never led to any work. And it really, I think, writers, anybody creative, actors, even directors, you can't help but it kind of the rejection feels so personal that you can't help but it sort of like fucks with your self-esteem a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, am I not as good as I thought I was?
Yep.
And so I went through that whole thing. And then one day I just simply made a decision. I said, you know what? It's not up to them, quote unquote them. It's up to me whether I break back in or not. So I kept on writing. So I knew that
That's
I was
good,
not going back. Go ahead.
That doesn't give you an excuse.
Exactly.
It puts it on you.
Back to the idea of forward thinking. I said, I know I'm going to get out of this. I was literally working in a cubicle. I'm going to get out of this cubicle one day, and I need to be able to look back and say that I did everything that I could in the time that I worked this job to improve myself as a writer.
Yeah.
So I would do my job. I aim to do just a good enough job to keep from getting fired. You know, there were times when they were like, oh, I got considered for promotions, and I was like, I don't want a promotion.
No, I'm good.
I'm good. I don't want the more money because I don't want the more responsibility.
Yeah.
That's going to lead to more meetings that I got to sit in.
And more comfort.
And also, I don't want to get called on the weekend.
Yeah.
When I leave here, you're not going to see me until Monday.
Yeah.
I wanted a very strict dividing line between this is just to keep the lights on.
That's kind of how I am with my day job, odd jobs too.
I would literally be at my computer, and I would Google a certain screenplay. I remember finding the screenplay for Seven, Kevin Andrew Walker, Seven. But because where I worked, the computers were all like networked, so I wanted to print it out. But I didn't want someone else who was doing their regular work to be going to the printer and pulling out their legitimate work documents and see John Doe's got a head in the box. What's this? In the box? So I would find these scripts. I remember finding like the original X-Men feature script that I would print out, and I would hit Control P, and I would stand up, and I would like literally put one foot out of my cubicle, and I would hit Enter. And I would dash to the printer, and I would stand over it while the script printed out, and I would grab it and take it back to my cubicle.
That's
hilarious. It was literally like having two jobs at once, but only getting paid for one.
Right.
Because if I had to honestly divide it, I probably put about 40% of my energy into the day job. Once again, to do just well enough to not get fired.
Yeah.
And then the other 60% was dedicated to finding scripts, reading scripts, writing scripts. So I wrote pilots, I wrote features,
Good for you.
I wrote specs. I would even, if I knew I was going to have a very busy work day, for whatever reason, like meetings or whatever, that I would be away from my desk, I would come in early. I would come in at like 6:37 in the morning, and I would write. And then when the work day started, I would be like, okay, I'm going to give this my due attention.
Yeah.
And I remember there was an older woman, older than me, who was an assistant there, and she had been there forever. And she usually was always the first person in the building. And every once in a while, when I had some writing to do and I would come in early, I would be there first. So that when she came in, she was like, you beat me here. Nobody ever beats me here. You're really good at your job. I'm like, thank you. But in my head, I'm like, yeah, I got to crack this second act of this script so I can go home and be able to feel like I did something productive with my life. So I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote.
Good for you. Do you think that down was valuable for you, or do you think
yeah, it was.
It's a weird question, but
it is a weird question. I would not wish the dry spell that I had on my worst enemy.
Okay.
Because it really did get to a point where I was like, maybe it is over.
Yeah.
But what it did for me was it sharpened my resolve.
Yes.
And it made me buckle down.
Yeah.
I probably wrote more in the years that I had that day job than I would have if I had been on staff somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'd have been writing for a show and making nice money and being
eating
comfortable.
out 5 days a week.
Yeah, exactly. Taking trips. Like, hey, whatever.